Hi there, folks. Hi, nice to see you. Just wait for everyone to arrive as usual. So I've already been up back and forth to my studio. I was just trying to get a book. So I went up there yesterday and got a few bits and pieces sorted out, and I've also been working on a couple of paintings. But the book that I was really interested in looking at this week, I think I forgot it, so I had to pop up there this morning. But it was a nice drive. So, oh yeah, no sailing for Phil. Yeah, it does feel like it's getting on a bit now, but such is life. I mean, the strange thing for me is to say I feel actually probably more busy than I normally do. So I think with my classes, I can just go to the class and I know where I am, and but with more sort of free time, I think what I need is you have to plan your time more, for me anyway. Otherwise, I can end up just sort of procrastinating and not getting much done. So that's been my working ground. Okay, so we'll assume everyone's here. And by the way, if you're new to the channel, I've now sort of got I sort of got about 100 subscribers now. So there may be some people watching who I haven't met yet. So if you're new to the channel, I'll say hi. Hopefully you'll enjoy some of the stuff that I've been doing. So I do my classes on a Monday where we do theory, and then on Wednesdays I do some sort of demonstration, normally pre-recorded now. And on Fridays I've been doing student feedback. So if you do want to paint along or get involved, you can go onto my website and find out details how to do that. And that's edcooper.art. And you can submit your work and get some feedback. And also, if you look on my on Instagram, I have a hashtag EAC tutor, and you can see some of my students' work, some of the stuff they've been doing as the weeks have unfolded, and it's really starting to build up now. So there's some good stuff on there. So well worth a look. Good. Okay, so we are carrying on with our theme of composition. One of the things I noticed last time I looked back at my video this time last week, and I noticed that I was writing down words and not spelling them out properly, which isn't that unusual, but also missing bits. I think it might be the sort of the stress of the live stream. So you just have to bear with me. You can just see it as abbreviations. Okay. So we're looking again at armatures. So I'm going to go over a couple that I thought might be useful for you to look at this week. The first one is the idea of a cross, okay, or cruciform. And that idea comes from this book, which I think I might have shown you the other week. This is by Ian Roberts and is a really nice book on composition. And one I particularly like because he's got excellent thumbnail sketches, which is worth a look. So he has a few, I'll give you a page here where he talks about these cross compositions. So the reason I think this is useful is because certainly for some of us in Suffolk, I'm sure Rupert Chitter as well will be able to find these as well, but particularly in Suffolk, when you've got such a flat landscape, the cross composition can be quite useful. So I'll give you some examples. So the idea of the cross is, let's use one that he's got here. Okay, So that's okay, and then something like that. Okay, so the main idea here is obviously you can see there's a cross in our sort of tonal design. Now, the sorts of things this might represent, as obviously it's just an abstract design here, is you get normally in fields, let's say we've got fields, you are going to get some sort of tree mass, okay, or you can find something that's tall enough to break the horizon line, okay, and then this, it might be, I mean, to me it initially looks a bit like a cast shadow, or maybe reflections in water, but it might also be, let's say it's a hedgerow, okay, and so we get some shapes like that, okay, and then this could be like distance or tree line. So something like that. So obviously perhaps this might get a bit bigger to increase our sense of perspective, okay. So that would be one example of a cross composition. Hi Ellie, Teresa. Nice to see you. Okay, so that's one example. Let's go for a different composition or design. So let's say we've got here. So even something like that still has the quality of the cross, because although it's not aligned, you still got basically, you're breaking the design on the vertical and the horizontal. So again, let's say this might be some sort of tree like that. Okay, and then a path like that. Let's say this path is going to be so something like that. Even that would be a sort of interpretation of this cross idea. Okay. Let's see, we can come up with another. So when you're thinking of, let's say, cloud masses, let's say we've got a low horizon. Okay, then you've got so this might represent blue sky. Okay, between the clouds. Let's put another one there. Okay, so these are like sky holes between clouds. So, but then that gives us this mass here, usually a bit darker at the top. And then, let's say another hedgerow like that. Okay, and that's going to be so maybe that's, it's not particularly well disguised, that one, but that's also, that would be another example of a cross. Okay, so he in the book actually he also gives a more, this is another uses it in a portrait example. So he has a portrait of someone sitting on a chair. Okay, so you got the feet there, and then it's a sofa. Okay, so even though the head and the feet don't break the composition, you still get this cross composition, okay? And in a portrait, it's probably quite a good, because again, it's got that, in this example, it's got sort of symmetry, which I know we said you try to avoid things being in the center. But there are exceptions, and you can still move the eye around, like perhaps with different colored cushions and stuff like that. So that would be another example of the cross composition. Okay, so those are ones worth looking at. So yeah, so I think it's quite good because I think John Singer Sargent said this thing. He had this idea that he said you could drop him off anywhere and any location, and he would be able to find a composition or make a painting out of it. And one of the great things about good composition is you can make something out of seemingly nothing. Okay. And so some of these very simple devices, these armatures, can really help us with that. If we know what to look for, then we can sort of find sort of designs, even with something as simple as a tree in a field or a path in a field. Okay, so that's the cross armature. To one side. Okay, so the next one is the fulcrum. Okay, and sometimes this is also described as a steel yard, which I think is a sort of some sort of balancing sort of thing. And it's based on this principle, which is if you have a seesaw, then you can balance a heavy weight here. If this is long enough, you can balance it with a smaller weight here. Okay. So it's by increasing the length of this line, you can use smaller and smaller weights to balance larger and larger objects. That's the sort of physical sort of idea. But what this means in terms of painting is you can balance large masses, which are relatively central in your painting, with smaller masses further off. Okay. So let's look at an example of this. Okay, so let's say we have got a tree line like that. And we'll just imagine this is some sort of foresty sort of area. But that's our large mass. Maybe with some shadow. Okay, large mass there. I'm going to try and resist putting a church in. Okay, and we might have just a solitary tree there. Okay, so you see that's quite a nice sort of compositional idea. You're balancing. The other way to think of it is like big versus small. Okay, but that's a nice idea. Now this could be achieved with, it doesn't have to be as literal as big shape versus small shape. It might also be related to colour, okay? But let's try some others, okay? So let's think of something. Again, I'm just sort of thinking of these off the top of my head. So we could have, in fact, we could crop this. Okay, and you've got a sort of cottage like that, maybe. There's our cottage. Looks a bit like a face. There we go. And then you balance that with, that's perhaps not a good division because you see it's right in the middle, so I'd probably extend that. Big house versus small house. Maybe. Okay, not quite so sure about that one. Or another one might be you've got loads of boats sort of moored up. Okay. Like that. So you've got large mass there and then small mass there. Okay, so those are some other, or a church, yeah, actually that might be nice there. There we go. Okay, so the fulcrum. So again, this is normally what we're interested in is this. Okay, I would say we find something, we're going for a walk and we see something maybe in the distance that pulls our eye and we sort of like. So this gives you an idea, is you're looking, when you have something that's distant and interesting, balance it with a larger mass in the foreground. Okay, so yeah, the fulcrum is a really good one, and again it manifests in, like, even when you do let's do, we talked last week I think about the L, so again that sort of can be a bit like the fulcrum. Okay, there's our tree. So again, this is our big mass, and then we play that against a small mass there. Okay, but the idea is you don't want this, okay, because, oh, I don't, perhaps if I put it here, what you really want to avoid is this. Okay, two things of too much equal value won't be as interesting. Okay, so this is why this makes for a better painting. Also, it won't work perhaps if you just put the big object at the very edge and the other object. With the fulcrum idea, this has to be a bit closer to the center, because what happens is the more you move it to the edge, the more interesting it becomes. That's why this sort of works, because things that are very close to the edge of the picture tend to pull the eye. Okay, which is why generally you try to avoid doing it unless you're deliberately trying to balance it with something else. Okay. Big mass up. No, I don't think so. I think, let's see. In fact, what's the example? I think he gives one in this book here. Let's see. Yeah, so he gives an example here in the book. This is the Ian Roberts book. So there's a hill. Okay. Then there's some posts there. And just some general, like, that's like your mass. Okay, I've tried to make that a negative space, but there we go. So lots of interest there, balanced with a smaller tree here. Okay, so no, yeah, it would work as well on the other side. You just have to look for when you're looking at your painting, normally it's after the event. If you're trying to analyze it, then you can sometimes ask, I mean, I think it's like we were saying, it's like, do you want the punchline to be on this side or this side? Well, normally I think on this side is a bit better, because of our tendency to take this in first and then that. But I think if you balance it, if you make this interesting enough, then again, the principle of balance should still apply, okay? So that's the fulcrum. So that's another one to have a go at. And then the last one I was going to suggest was radiating lines. So this, again, is a great one for making something out of nothing. But so in its most abstract form, if we take our rule of thirds, this is a bit like Teresa's walk down the path thing. Okay, radiating lines is simply that. Okay, but obviously any scene where you're looking down a road or looking down a path is always gonna normally have some quality of this. Okay, so so here's our path, and then we're deliberately looking for radiating lines, so we want that to come in, and maybe that can also just be a big shape. We're going to do this darker. This is an idea I saw in a book, which was, hopefully, let's see, you can see that. Say you got a field and it's a ploughed field, okay, and then let's say you've got hundreds of these radiating lines. When you have that sort of a situation, one book I read suggested that your eye will move too quickly. It's sort of almost like it goes across these lines so quickly that's almost a bit unsatisfying. So what it suggested was to break it up, even though you can still see those lines, was to break it up with some horizontals. Maybe these would be cast shadows, okay, going over the... And you'll see that also with the looking down the tunnel, is that you can break it up by using sort of cast shadows or just variations of tone, okay? So even your clouds might be radiating lines. So let's... Okay, so that's going to be our... Let's say that's a path. Okay, now remember again, I'm trying to do this in a way where you sort of disguise it somewhat. So there's a cloud. Another cloud like that. And then maybe some sort of tree line here. This could be another tree line here. Okay, and that's going to be our field. So that would be, again, that's not perhaps quite so, I've tried to disguise it somewhat there, but that would also be radiating lines, okay? Maybe using some sort of, a bit more perspective, a few more perspective clues there. Okay, so radiating lines, again, even good for urban landscapes. You'll see, you know, looking down sort of streets, you'll get this, and So if you go out, so it's probably better to do this view than just do the straight on view of a house. This gives you more depth and perhaps more interest, okay? So yeah, that's another one to look out for. Radiating lines, okay? So that's 3 for this week. Radiating lines, what were the other ones? Fulcrum, and yeah, the cross, okay? So 3 of those. So if you get the chance to go out and do some little thumbnails, try and look for examples of those. That would be a good start for this week. Now, what I was going to say is, so for my master copy on Wednesday, I'm going to try and do something inspired by Kevin McPherson. Okay, I've got his book there and his other book here, Oil Painting with Light and Colour. So he's an excellent painter, and you can learn a lot about, you know, getting what's essential, what makes for good painting by reading his books. So I would recommend those. He also encourages a very sort of thick, use thick oil paint, which is good because a lot of people, myself included, tend to paint a bit thin. And also he uses a limited palette. So I think he uses about 4 different tubes of paint, and then that's it. Everything comes from that. So I might have a go with that on Wednesday. But I thought I would just mention he has some good tips for this process. So we're talking about how to design better paintings. And better paintings. And hopefully, obviously, you're getting the main gist, which is to actually go through this process of actually design. Okay, so you don't just look at your photo and you don't just go out there and set up your easel. You actually think in terms, you go through a bit of a process and think about the design, and hopefully that in itself will help you to make better paintings. Okay, but he talks about a couple of stages which I think echo something I mentioned earlier. The first one is to make some notes. Okay, and this might be about your theme, or it might be about the specific picture you're going to copy. So your notes are going to include things like mood, atmosphere, and you'll notice that these are about how the view makes you feel. Okay, so that's particularly what you're trying to tune into, and just become clear about maybe you're trying to find out why are you painting this scene, what interests you. Okay, and it might feel a little bit like, well, sometimes these things, they're sort of beneath the surface. You can't really, you don't know why you like something. But actually just asking yourself the question can clarify. So I think I've gone through this process, you know, sort of many times, and it helped me become aware of certain moods in nature that I was trying to capture. And again, they're difficult to say in words, but some people say my paintings can be a bit dark. Well, it's because I sort of like this quality of the sort of strangeness of nature, which maybe that's not the right word, but there's just something yeah, just something sort of strange, almost mystical, going through forests, large fields, the sky. And it's that atmosphere, or the way it makes me feel. That's what I would try and get across in my paintings. So you make some notes, okay, and then you go through a process of analyze. I don't know if That's an American spelling. Analyze. Okay, so there are several things you're looking at there. You can think in terms of lines. Okay, so one of the books I've looked at says some scenes are basically going to be more about verticals and horizontals. Okay, so they're going to have more that feel. This is on an abstract level. Okay, even the brush marks can have this quality of up and down. Okay, some sort of compositions are going to be, like we looked at the radiating lines, are going to be much more about diagonal forms. Okay, so that's like up and down, this is diagonal, and some views are going to be perhaps much more about curves. So we could call that straight, diagonal, these are abbreviations, and curves. And it's not a case that you look at the scene and you try to think what's going to help you best communicate the mood. So like a forest, you know, or sort of some scenes are going to give you more of this straight line sort of thing. Whereas this tends to have more energy, it's a bit more dynamic. I've got a good friend of mine, James, James Self, if he's out there. Hi, James. And I like a thing he does, he often, he will do sort of scenes where the horizon sort of slopes down and then maybe plays a slightly off, like a diagonal like that, okay? And those sorts of things, you know, again, it shifts your, instead of everything being straight and like almost drawn with a ruler, it can just add interest. So when you have a diagonal like that, you often perhaps balance it with a diagonal that goes the other way. And so when you move things like that, you can still compensate for them, okay? But you go through a process of asking yourself about the line drawing, okay? And then you might also go through that stage of, if we take this composition here, is playing with different arrangements. Let's say like that, or let's say like that, okay? So different ways to change your focal point and change what you're sort of looking at. So notes, analyze, okay? Now this is the bit that I'm interested in this week is, so he then says number 3, which is divide the scene into light and dark. And that is, so no sort of great variety of tonal values there, but just you're simply trying to break it down into its black and white pattern. And actually what he has in the book is a suggestion that you could almost, say you've got photographs, you could almost use tracing paper. So I'm going to have a quick go at this. I don't know how easy this is going to be. I'll just do a quick one. So so if you can see that, that is Ickworth, okay, which is a sort of NHS, not NHS, National Trust sort of building up near Bury St Edmunds. Okay, I was up there last year. Okay, now this is the challenge. Oh, let's see. I'm trying to get it so you can see what I'm up to. But if I put some, I'll tell you what, okay, you can have a good look at it there. That's the view, right? So I'm going to have to move it out of shot now. So he's recommending tracing this, which of course I could do sort of normally, but as I'm filming, it's a bit more difficult. So if I give myself the composition I'm interested in, which is relatively sort of wide, like a widescreen TV, okay? And then if I squint my eyes, then what I see is something like that. There's the building, the dome. Okay, and then this is a dark mass, and this is a dark mass. And then what I quite liked was there were these sort of flower beds here. Actually, I think, have I already shown you this? I think I might have used this example already, but anyway, it had all these little sort of shrubs and stuff like that. Okay, so if I was doing it as black and white, okay, then we've got little dots of the light on top of the shrubs. Something like that. Okay, so that would be my black and white pattern. Now I'm going to try and find another one here. Okay, so this was another scene from that day. And we've got a sort of tree here, which is quite a nice reference photo actually. So that was the tree. Then we had again a sloped landscape like that. Some trees there. In fact, that came up like that. And there was another tree like that. And then maybe there was so let's block that in. Now obviously there were some sky holes in, I can't really do that here. Okay, but that was my light and dark pattern. So as you can see, it's very much a simplification of the scene. But he says this is an important process to go through because I say if you can't make a good enough light and dark pattern just using black and white alone, then maybe it's not going to be good reference. Okay. And I'll just do one more, and in this one we've got so it's quite nice, these sloping landscapes, again trying to break away from just that straight flat horizontal, which so this will help you in your design, thinking of design and trying to think what works. Okay, you're stripping down to very simple elements here. There's a bit of a fence there. So something like that. Now that wouldn't take you a couple of minutes to do in a sketchbook, but before you attempt a painting, I would recommend going through this, simply breaking it down into a black and white sketch and then seeing what that looks like. Okay, so this is all again a process of simplification and abstraction. Now let's see, how long have we got? Yeah, so I'll do, so once he's done that process, light and dark, then do a value study, okay, which is what we've all been working on. So I thought I'd just do one here. So value study. And I'm going to pencil there. So he's talking about 5 tones max, okay? So you've got your darkest dark, and hopefully now we're all getting into the habit of making sure that's a nice sort of block of dark, dark, light, okay? And then that gives you 3 mid-tones in between. 1, 2, 3, okay? So if you can get 9 tones. You can probably get, if you're very careful and delicate, you might be able to get, 20 tones. But when you're making a simplified statement, don't really think beyond 5. I think that's a useful sort of rule of thumb at the beginning. Okay, and then let me sort of take, in fact, I'll take the one I've just done if I was doing that. So in the value study, you're trying to work out where are your darkest darks and your lightest lights. So 1 and 5 are important because they tend to, if you can get them beside each other, then that's going to give you your focal point. Okay, so now this is a bit bigger than a thumbnail sketch I might normally do. Okay, so this is the one I just looked at, so that comes down there. So that's basically a tree, and then you've got the tree line. Comes like that, maybe with some smaller trees. So I think that was the basic design of it. Okay, so the way the camera's done it is it's actually burnt out, it's made the trees almost all dark. So, but for our sake, I'll do it at say 2. So I've still got the darkest dark left. So you can see by using the edge of the pencil, by holding it at an angle like this, I can achieve this almost like a wash of tone, which is much better than going for the tip and getting that scribble. So if you use the edge of the pencil, that's what you want to do. Okay, so we've got our tree just like that. So that's given us 2. Now 3, so if I squint, basically the land mass is about 3 as well. Okay, and maybe, well, it's a bit darker at the foreground. Okay, then we had these, another dark accent. There was sort of fence posts here. So hopefully you can see that. again, with a thumbnail, you're not trying to get too much into detail, but there were fence posts there which sort of gave a nice sort of perspective line, and there were also some smaller trees in that distant bit there. Okay, so now that's good because that's given us our sky now until I put 4 in is all white. So where do we want our focal point to be? Well, as it happens, if I draw the lines down, okay, rule of thirds. So I'm going to put my focal point here. So that's going to be my lightest light. So using 4, I can put in these cloud shapes at the top of the composition like so. Like that. And then, as I say, I reserved 1. So if I was going to put 1 anywhere, it might be within the tree mass around about here. Now, I wouldn't want it to be too hard edged with the background, so we could have little dots there, or a little bit of a transition around the light. But something like that. So that would be my tonal study. Okay, so that's just using hatching with a 6B pencil. Okay, and then I could tweak that depending. I quite like this light shape I've created here. So it's not just all here, there is a little bit of light up in the sky, which I think just creates a bit more interest. Again, it's a bit like a perspective shape. Now, this is just a little side note. Where you have the lightest light, if you want that to glow, you can almost, if you lighten that horizon in that area, it feels like the light is sort of spilling through, and that can be made more apparent by darkening at the edges here. So that distant tree mass, if we make it dark here, then it's really getting light in the middle. Okay, and so that keeps that light sort of near the center of the composition. Okay, so that is a little walkthrough of how I would do my thumbnail. Okay, and so that's really what I wanted to go through with you this week. So we've looked at 3 new armatures. Okay, and we've looked at Kevin McPherson, his suggestion of you make notes. Okay, and you make a purely black and white study. Okay. And again, this is really good. It gets you into the mindset of a printmaker or making lino cuts. You're being much more of almost like a graphic artist by breaking it down into black and white. And you can still approach complex subjects. Of course, you will lose lots of detail, but where you play the lights against the darks, it's how much can you explain with just that that balance. So black and white, and then what we've seen here, which is a value study. Still a simplification, okay? And then I think what he goes on to talk about is doing small colour studies, which we might explore maybe next week. We'll see what happens. And then you've got your material, and you can again play around with color design and different sort of moods to sort of work out what you're going to do at a later stage. So this is all still part of planning our paintings. Okay, so I hope you found that useful. I would say definitely check out Kevin McPherson's work, and his books are excellent value. I will have a go at one of his paintings on Wednesday. So I hope you found that useful. Of course, you can always like the video and subscribe. That would be much appreciated. And you can leave me any comments or questions if you have areas you'd like me to cover, or particular artists you think you'd like me to have a look at. Then that would be, appreciated as well. Okay, so thanks a lot for that, and I will see you on Wednesday. For those of you that are doing the tutorial, we will be on for 11:05 on Zoom. Okay, so thanks a lot for that, and I'll see you soon. Okay, bye. 11:05 on Zoom. Okay, so thanks a lot for that, and I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.